Cleopatra is one of the most famous rulers of Egypt. There are legends about her reign, and after her death, the queen left behind many secrets of artifacts. One of them was found quite recently, and it seems he is able to change the whole story. Let's take a look at it. Last fall, Israeli archaeologists were excavating in the Amethyst National Park in Jerusalem when they came across an interesting artifact, an amethyst seal about 2,000 years old. It was decorated with an image of a biblical tree, from the fruits of which, according to legend, balm and perfume were made for the famous Queen Cleopatra. Apparently, the artifact could belong to Cleopatra herself. Scientists found an engraving on it, a seal with the image of a plant, which is a kind of persimmon. In ancient times, it was extremely expensive and was used to make incense. Some scientists believe that the variety of persimmon depicted on the artifact was often given to Cleopatra, after which a special balm was made from it for the queen, which changed the appearance of Cleopatra and made her more beautiful and visually younger. The artifact can change the whole history, because if we can find this variety or at least artificially cultivate it, then scientists will be able to create a drug for rejuvenation, which will affect the future history of the Earth. However, many scientists believe that the persimmon variety with the artifact has already disappeared, so we can only hope for cultivation. Another equally interesting artifact can also change the whole story. More precisely, not an artifact, but a whole object, because we are talking about the tomb of Cleopatra. In fact, so far no one knows for sure where the legendary queen rests, and for storage it has not been found. This is surprising, because scientists were able to find the burial of even the pharaohs who ruled long before Cleopatra. In any case, there are already serious developments in the Cleopatra case, and scientists may soon make grand discoveries. So, in the 2020th year, an international team of archaeologists published preliminary data on the study of a closed tomb in the ancient Egyptian city of Tapa Magna. Two gilded mummies were found in the tomb, and one of them may belong to Queen Cleopatra. Firstly, this is indicated by the fact that during excavations at the site, the head of a statue depicting Cleopatra was discovered. Secondly, the mummy was originally covered with gold leaf, which indicates a very high social status of the buried. Thirdly, one of the mummies has an image of a scarab, a symbol of royal power, engraved on a gold cover, not a rebirth, which was used by the rulers of Egypt. Finally, magnetopos were already finding the supposed remains of Cleopatra's ancestors. In general, many factors indicate that the mummy of the queen has finally been found. If this is true, then it means that soon we will be able to learn even more about Cleopatra. For example, we will be able to find out how the ruler actually died, because scientists are still arguing about this. Or will we be able to find out exactly what Cleopatra looked like during her lifetime? In general, this ruler's life was very unusual, mysterious and interesting, so it's worth learning more about her. Watch on to find out the most mystical and frightening details about the life of Egypt's most famous ruler. It is likely that if what archaeologists found in Topaz with Magna really turns out to be the mummy of Cleopatra, then scientists will be able to establish the exact cause of death of the queen. As I have already said, no one really knows what Cleopatra died of, but it is 100% known that she committed suicide. Cleopatra did this in order not to become a prisoner of Octavian after Egypt was conquered by Rome. According to the most common version, Cleopatra committed suicide with the help of a poisonous snake. They say that faithful female servants brought a basket with figs, where a poisonous reptile was sitting, which bit the capital and she soon died. According to another version, Cleopatra took the usual poison, which was in her golden hairpin. But modern scientists believe that the cause of Cleopatra's death was not the bite of a poisonous snake, but a full-fledged poisonous mixture of sawdust, hemlock plants, and aconite. This makes sense, because such a mixture leads to the death of a person within a few hours without any pain and without changing appearance. And given that Cleopatra cared about appearance, it is unlikely that she would have subjected herself to a long agony, or a mark on the body after a snake bite. Anyway, so far Cleopatra's death remains one of the most mystical mysteries. The fact that Cleopatra was beautifully known to everyone, this is what she is shown in films, cartoons, and books. It is from them that we know the image of the queen. It is a common fact that Cleopatra was so beautiful that men were ready to say goodbye to their lives just for one night with her. All this sounds cool, but as it turned out, it's not entirely true. Maybe Cleopatra really got rid of her lovers for the night, but the fact that she was an indescribable beauty is doubtful. A few years ago, scientists examined a 2,000-year-old coin, lonely in the 2007 year, which depicts Cleopatra's face and profile, as well as several other finds with images of the queen. They found out that Cleopatra was quite an ordinary woman who clearly fell short of the standard of beauty. She was short, plump, she had a big long and wide nose, big eyes, and narrow lips. Despite this, she charmed literally everyone. But why? It's all about Cleopatra's sharp mind. She was described as an incredibly intelligent and talented girl with a convincing speech, a confident voice and broad knowledge of astronomy, philosophy, mathematics, and linguistics. Cleopatra, by the way, knew from 7 to 10 foreign languages, so there were no translators at her court. And it's amazing that such a smart girl delighted everyone around. Cleopatra was not just smart, but also an innovative girl. She had a huge impact on the cosmetics of her time, and her methods of self-care are used even by modern girls, at least indirectly. For example, one of Cleopatra's most famous features was her expressive black arrows on her eyes. The queen drew them not only for beauty, she knew that there was a prison in the eyeliner, a substance that helps fight eye infections. Such at that time were not uncommon among the entire Egyptian population. In addition, the arrows minimized the impact of the bright Egyptian sun. Cleopatra generally had a broad knowledge of chemistry, so she was well versed in many substances. For example, she knew that honey has antibacterial properties, so she applied it to the skin of the face as a cream. And to keep the skin soft and clean, Cleopatra wiped her face with rose water. Interestingly, to this day, this ingredient is part of most tunics and cleansers. Among other things, Cleopatra was well versed in perfumery. She believed in the power of fragrance not only as a cosmetic, but also as an instrument of political persuasion. So, according to legend, Cleopatra doused the sails of her ship with perfume before going on her first date with Mark Antony to make sure that he would smell her before he saw her. Cleopatra is so steeped in chemistry, alchemy, and fragrances that she even owns a perfume factory. This says a lot, because with her status, she could not strain herself and simply order her subjects to get any fragrance. And she liked to create new fragrances that would help her both in everyday life and in negotiations. It is believed that Cleopatra even wrote down recipes for her signature perfumes, but the book was lost or burned in a fire in the Library of Alexandria. The ruins of the Cleopatra perfume factory are located on the Dead Sea near the city. By the way, there is evidence that the factory also acted as with some interior items similar to those that can be seen in modern beauty salons. Marriage and elimination. Cleopatra came from the Macedonian Ptolemaic dynasty. The members of the royal dynasty greatly appreciated the purity of their ancestry and practically did not allow themselves to marry people from other families. In other words, autonomy was the norm of incest. Many of Cleopatra's ancestors were partners with cousins, and it is likely that her own parents were brother and sister. By the way, historians believe that incest could be one of the reasons why Cleopatra's appearance was actually not the most elegant. In any case, in accordance with this custom, Cleopatra was also no exception in terms of incest. After the death of Ptolemy VII, her father, Cleopatra began to rule Egypt together with her younger brother. Then they got married, but in the struggle for power they could not get along. The brother expelled his sister from Egypt, and Cleopatra went to Rome, where she enlisted the support of Julius Caesar, and also concluded an alliance with him. The Romans invaded Alexandria, after which Cleopatra began to brutally eliminate her competitors. After the war, Cleopatra married her second younger brother by the name of the 14th, but it is assumed that he was also killed by Cleopatra when she tried to make her son her co-ruler. In general, Cleopatra was not only smart, but she was also quite a tough ruler. In addition, Cleopatra was a goddess, and literally. And it's not that her subjects treated her like a goddess. She proclaimed herself a deity. Plutarch, the famous ancient Greek writer and philosopher, wrote about this. According to him, Cleopatra was the divine manifestation of Isis, the goddess of the ideal of femininity and motherhood. Cleopatra called herself the new Isis and told her subjects that she was the embodiment of Isis on earth and the reincarnation of the goddess. Plutarch wrote that she often appeared in public in the sacred robes of Isis. In this she was supported by Mark Antony, a Roman politician and commander and Cleopatra's lover. He claimed to be the incarnation of Osiris on earth. It made sense, because Osiris was the spouse of both sitting and the king of the afterlife. In general, Cleopatra was betrayed not only sitting down. Scientists believe that she tried on the images of different goddesses. Spending and betting. Cleopatra had not only divine images, but also divine spending, in the sense that she squandered money incredibly actively and widely. Cleopatra easily spent huge sums on her whims and could squander a colossal amount in one sitting. There is one interesting episode with the participation of the same Mark Antony. According to legend, Cleopatra once argued with him that she could spend $10 million for one meal. According to scientists, this is about $10 to $20 million in today's money. It's time to make a bet. Cleopatra asked for a modest meal, and after that her servants brought a cup of vinegar. Then she took off one of the earrings, took out a very expensive pearl from it, threw it into vinegar and watched it dissolve. Then she drank a cup of vinegar, thereby ordering that she would do anything to win the bet. Modern scientists have been skeptical about this story for a long time, but then they conducted an experiment. They took out vinegar and pearls, did the same thing as Cleopatra. It turned out that vinegar does dissolve the carbonate at the end in the pearl, but most likely it would take more time than a whole day. Well, write in the comments what you would do first of all if you were a deity. And also, if you were interested, put likes, subscribe.
And that's it for me. If you liked this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. For me, your activity. This is the best reward. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.